Temperatures plummet, emergency calls spike. Hundreds are admitted to hospital as cold weather sweeps the country. Unpacking a controversy, why some say they're being treated like criminals in quarantine. Demanding punishment. Taiwan's premier weighs in on Olympic speed skater Wang Yiting and that uniform. Plus,
I'm Louise Watt and I'm in Tainan in Taiwan's south to find out how a love story brought an indigenous language back to life.
A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Taiwan is experiencing its first cold front of the year, with sleet in Matsu County for the first time in 18 years. Many older and at-risk people are finding it hard to cope with the weather, with more than 600 already having been sent to hospital. Jaime Ocon reports.
Patients are being rushed for emergency care as Taiwan temperatures dipped below 10 degrees Celsius over the weekend. It's the first cold spell of the year, and it's proven to be a challenge for the elderly.
年纪大的人要小心，尤其现在的高血压、天气呢，血压会高。我们常强调，围巾很好用哦，保护颈部甚至头部，弄到肚脐呢上面。
With over 630 people reportedly hospitalized due to the cold, doctors are urging the public to dress warmly and stay indoors. They also advise the elderly to seek medical attention if they develop any feelings of discomfort. Temperatures are expected to stay low for this week, prompting the government to issue a cold surge advisory for many areas in Taiwan, where ground level temperatures have dropped below 6 degrees. Areas like Xueshan near central Taiwan have been covered in snow, a winter wonderland for many visitors. But as the cold surge continues, officials are reminding people to layer up and stay warm. Chris Ma and Jaime Ocon for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan reported 49 cases of COVID-19 on Monday, consisting of 4 local cases and 45 imported ones. No deaths were reported. 3 of the new domestic cases were found in people already in quarantine. The government says it is aware of the transmission chain for each case. Taiwan Central Epidemic Command Center last week announced plans to reduce quarantine from 14 days to 10 in the coming months. A netizen in Taiwan has ignited debate about quarantine package inspections after food delivered to them by family members was spoiled by quarantine officials. It led them to ask whether they were in quarantine or prison. But health authorities defended the inspections. James Chater reports.
Beef with a side of cigarettes? These are some of the prohibited items Taiwan's health officials have found in packages sent to government-run quarantine facilities. As well as cigarettes, there's been alcohol and even small packets of drugs. Taiwanese health official released these videos after widespread debate online about package inspections. It was sparked by a person complaining food sent to them while in quarantine had been crushed.
那事实上，我们在这里面也查过有多起的里面有放相关的违禁品，甚至是相关的这些我们不喜欢的这些毒品简单就这样讲。那这些在进去对整体的一个管制是不好的。
But the sometimes invasive inspections have led some people online to say that while in quarantine, they're treated like criminals. An allegation denied by Wang Pisheng, the health official who released the videos.
不是像对待犯人的，我们是对待家人一样在关心他。那希望他能够这个平安。那希望所有在检疫所的人也能够平安。
In a Sunday Facebook post, Wang elaborated that being in quarantine is not a holiday. He added that only unusual packages are inspected and the proportion containing restricted items is high. Arrivals to Taiwan must quarantine for at least a week. During that time, neither alcohol nor cigarettes can be sent into the facility. Taiwan's health chief said the inspections would remain, but has requested officials handle the packages more carefully.
这样的情形有这样感觉，我们会提醒他在做相关检查的时候，能够尽量不要就是说破坏，会让觉得不舒服了。
Regardless of how the inspections are conducted, health officials hope any outside meals delivered to quarantine facilities won't have unexpected side dishes. Patrick Chen and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.
Hong Kong is set to decide whether it will implement mandatory testing on all its 7.5 million people in the battle against the latest COVID-19 outbreak. According to local media reports, the government is putting together a task force led by the Security Bureau to lay the groundwork for universal testing. But as Ryan Ho-Kilpatrick reports, the health system is already under strain.
These are the scenes that shook a city. COVID-19 patients forced to wait outside overcrowded hospitals for days as temperatures dropped. With the government requiring that everyone who tests positive, regardless of severity, be placed in isolation, patients and staff alike had no other option. In response to public outrage, authorities have issued a new decree demanding that these patients all be brought in from the cold. But with thousands of new cases every day and facilities already over capacity, healthcare workers say this is no solution.
咁只係將個問題由戶外搬咗去室內。咁而家面對嘅情況就係好多嘅確診病人其實擺喺一啲普通嘅病房，但係個普通病房咧本身係冇一啲即係所謂感染控制嘅設備嘅，例如可能係一啲負壓系統啦。
Hospital employees are caught in a catch-22 and must put political demands above what they consider best for their patients.
即係政府嘅即係一啲嘅宣傳啦，都係同大家講。呢種疾病係好危險嘅，越有高度傳染性。如果你真係確診咧，就係記住要隔離，要去醫院求醫。
After 2 years of fear-mongering and little preparation by the government, they say the current crisis should come as no surprise.
所有醫院之後本身就冇一個所謂即係應對嘅方案，即係醫管局咧就冇俾一個應對嘅方案俾一啲醫院去睇下點樣處理大量確診病人入院嘅時候要點樣處理就冇嘅。
After many healthcare workers volunteered as protest medics in 2019 and criticized the health impacts of widespread tear gas use, they were already in the government's crosshairs before the pandemic. When they organized a strike to demand immediate government action to stop the pandemic in early 2020, it triggered a political purge that caused mass resignations and weakened unions.
The health workers were trying to tell the government that if a major outbreak occurred, the doctors and nurses and other health workers simply doesn't have capacity to accommodate all the patients, and thus would pose a huge public health crisis. And what the government did was to demean the health workers and shame them for disrupting public health systems, threaten them with firing them, and also to take repercussions against some of the leaders of the unions. One of the union leaders of the health workers were later arrested for national security-related crimes, and doctors and nurses who participated in the strikes were also facing some disciplinary punishment, including their salary was deducted.
Local hospital workers and public health experts say that instead of listening to their concerns, the Hong Kong government is continuing to demand the impossible and is now looking to Beijing to make it happen. With cases on the rise daily, the government is now making plans for population-wide testing, a move that healthcare workers say will put them under even more pressure and could create more opportunities for the virus to spread. Ryan Ho-Kilpatrick for TaiwanPlus.
Hundreds of people took to the streets of Taipei on Sunday to call for a constitutional amendment guaranteeing animal rights. The activists braved low temperatures and heavy rain on their march from the presidential office to the legislature. They want lawmakers to support the amendment so that it can be put to a public vote alongside November's local elections. In Taiwan, constitutional changes must first be agreed on by 75% of lawmakers and then approved in a national referendum. The government is currently deciding on possible amendments to be voted on later this year. Will he or won't he? The next step for Taipei Mayor Ko Wen-je has been on the lips of political commentators for months. Now his wife has given the strongest hint yet. The doctor-turned-politician will run for Taiwan's president in 2024. Ko shot onto the political scene in 2014 as an independent, winning the Taipei mayoral election. After earning re-election in 2018, he formed the Taiwan People's Party, which is currently the third largest party in the legislature. Initially seen as an ally of the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, Ko has been sharply critical of the government in recent years. On Sunday, Kerr's wife, Peggy Chen, took to Facebook saying Kerr has made it clear he is preparing for a run at the presidency. Premier Su Tseng-chang has weighed in on the controversy over a Taiwanese speed skater who wore a Chinese national team uniform. Wang Yiting triggered an online backlash when a training video of her wearing a Chinese skin suit went viral shortly before the opening of the Beijing Winter Olympics. Wang went on to represent Taiwan at the Games. Taiwan's athletes have regularly met with outrage in China for displaying emblems related to Taiwan. Huang's case is a rare example of the situation in reverse. On Monday, Premier Su Tseng-chang said her action was extremely inappropriate and has called for a further investigation.
台湾是一个主权独立的国家，也一再被评比是最自由、最民主的国家。我们大家一起努力，世界会更看见台湾。
The 2022 Winter Olympic Games have wrapped up, with Norway topping the medal table, followed by Germany and China. As John Van Trieste reports, while Beijing lauded the Games as a success, they were overshadowed by all kinds of controversy.
The Games were controversial before they even began. In the run-up, attention was focused as much on China's human rights record as it was on the athletes.
As you all know, we made a decision, the United States, not to send a diplomatic or official delegation to Beijing, given the PRC's ongoing genocide and crimes against humanity in Xinjiang and other human rights abuses.
Several countries joined the U.S. in a diplomatic boycott, most of them citing the treatment of China's Muslim Uyghur population. Beijing confronted the concerns head-on by choosing an ethnic Uyghur cross-country skier to light the Olympic torch for the opening ceremony. Political messages continued as the Games got underway.
我们呢是一贯反对借这个冬奥会来进行这个把体育政治化的这个行为。
But the organizing committee spokesperson called the allegations of abuse against Uyghurs a lie, and when asked about Taiwan's participation, she claimed Taiwan was an indivisible part of China. The hashtag #MeToo controversy involving one of China's top tennis players also cast a shadow on the Games. Apparently choreographed appearances of retired Chinese tennis star Peng Shuai failed to quell speculation over her well-being. Peng disappeared abruptly after accusing a prominent Chinese official of sexual assault. The competition too was hit with controversy. Teenage Russian figure skater Kamila Valieva made headlines with a record-breaking quadruple jump. Then again when the Court of Arbitration for Sport controversially allowed her to continue competing after testing positive for a banned substance.
I know from my athlete's time a little bit about pressure. But this pressure is beyond my imagination. And in particular for a girl of 15 years old. And to see her there struggling on the ice.
Valieva's case has raised questions about the ethics of putting a minor under such intense public scrutiny, and led the International Skating Union to consider raising the minimum age for Olympic figure skaters. All this took place against the backdrop of the pandemic. Though COVID prevention measures stopped any major outbreaks, athletes subject to quarantine complained of poor conditions, including bad food and no access to training equipment. As the Olympics closed Sunday, people on the streets of Beijing expressed pride in their games and their country's performance.
开心啊，怎么不开心？就你看那么多热点都咱中国的，赢了那么多金牌，非常厉害，中国很牛啊！
But outside China, these games, unlike any other, may not be remembered for the reasons that organizers had hoped. Rick Yi and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up, we find out why a book about spicy food in China has caused an unexpected stir. Stay with us.
Welcome to the Gym Mando. 你想住哪里? Where do you want to live?
我要住哪里？看你表现啊！ 那你家人呢？
你家有几个人 ？How many people do you have in your family？
我爸、我妈、阿嬷、大舅舅、大舅舅、小舅妈、大婶婶、小叔叔、小婶婶、小姑、他们的老婆，这样讲。
And where in Taipei do you live?
Wait, you know that? You've been to my place before.
That must have been a very insignificant experience in my life.
Welcome back to TaiwanPlus News. A Taiwanese publisher has pulled a book about the history of spicy food in China and apologized to its Chinese author because its editors incorrectly changed how a word referred to China. The errors made for some puzzling content, as Louise Watt explains.
The chili pepper holds an important place in Chinese cuisine, to the extent that its history is explored in a new book by a Chinese researcher at Guangdong Sun Yat-sen University, Cao Yu. But when the Taiwanese edition of the History of Spicy Food in China hit shelves in Taiwan, it caused an unexpected stir. Editors had changed all references to the continent to read China. The Mandarin word da lu means continent, but it's also used to refer to mainland China. Some Taiwanese are against calling China the mainland, as it suggests that Taiwan is a part of China. The changes meant the Taiwanese version of the book had Christopher Columbus discovering the new China instead of just a new continent. The author expressed his unhappiness on Facebook, saying he never meant for it to be written that way. Readers also flooded the publisher, Ryefield Publishing, with complaints. A lawmaker from the opposition Kuomintang has blamed the government. She said, "It is sad that the Tsai administration's continuing anti-China protect Taiwan stance leads to these kinds of ideologically motivated changes because people feel compelled to be politically correct." A legislator from President Tsai's ruling Democratic Progressive Party responded to the criticism.
应该是出版社校对翻译的错误，他们自己更正即可，国民党不必无限上纲。
The publisher has apologized to the author and readers and says the errors are the result of negligent proofreading by an editor. It plans to publish a new version. Alex Chen and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison has accused Beijing of an act of intimidation after the country said a Chinese naval vessel directed a laser at an Australian military surveillance aircraft. Australia's Defence Department says a laser from the People's Liberation Army Navy vessel illuminated an Australian maritime patrol plane that was flying over the continent's northern approaches. It says the incident last week potentially endangered lives. The Chinese vessel was one of two sailing through the Arafura Sea, which lies between Australia's north coast and New Guinea's south coast. Relations between Australia and China have plummeted in recent years. Morrison described it as a dangerous, reckless and irresponsible act.
I can see it no other way than an act of intimidation, one that is unprovoked, unwarranted, and Australia will never accept such acts of intimidation.
US President Joe Biden has agreed in principle to meet with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin over tensions at the Russia-Ukraine border. But any meeting would be contingent on Moscow not invading its neighbour. French President Emmanuel Macron helped broker the potential summit as part of a diplomatic push to prevent a conflict. After speaking with Putin on the phone, Macron said France and Russia are both in favour of a diplomatic solution and that the two countries' foreign ministers will meet in the next few days. Today is the United Nations International Mother Language Day, a day to promote linguistic diversity. The UN estimates that the world loses 2 Indigenous languages every single month. From here in Taiwan, our reporter Louise Watt has this story on how a couple revived Siraya, an Indigenous language that had disappeared.
song in a language that died out more than 100 years ago. But this husband and wife have brought Soraya back to life. Uma is a Soraya, an indigenous group that used to live on the plains in western Taiwan. For years, Uma had been researching her heritage. One day, a professor friend sent her a copy of a Soraya language Bible. When her Filipino husband Edgar picked it up, he was stunned.
It's like eureka. Eureka means you discover something very special. When I look at the language itself, it looks very familiar and very similar to my language.
Edgar's mother tongue is Bisaya. Like Taiwan's indigenous languages, it's part of the Austronesian language family, which extends through Southeast Asia to islands in the Central and South Pacific. Edgar could read the 17th century Soraya Gospel.
There are quite a lot of vocabularies that is really, it's just like very much. Yeah.
When the Dutch landed on present-day Tainan in the 1600s, the Soraya outnumbered Han Chinese. Dutch missionaries wanted to spread Christianity, so they lived here among the Soraya, learned their language, and developed a Romanized writing system for it. These texts outlived the spoken language, which disappeared around 120 to 150 years ago, after more and more Chinese emigrated to Taiwan and mixed with Soraya. But no one knew how it might sound, until Edgar picked up the Bible that day. On one side is Dutch, and the other Soraya.
Pei kai kame wagi kata ki paulan kamamsing ka inay kami dumilug tu repungan ra haume ei kame kilitu.
虽然说有一段时间已经没有在这样子这个语言没有在流通，好没有在人跟人之间在使用，可是当我们找到了它还有它的一个资料，然后我们认为用这样的一个资料，它是可以去重新去发展的。
They started with songs. Edgar, a professional composer, turned simple Soraya words and phrases into music. The couple worked with linguists and trained teachers, and now the language is taught in more than 20 schools in Tainan. In this school, all the pupils learn it for 2 hours a week.
例如说，我说一只蝴蝶，你们要怎么讲？等一下，老师会把课本发下去。的地是什么？鱼，好。的地，很好，再来。安，好，安，来。
As well as learning grammar and singing songs, teachers take the children on walks around Old Soraya land and introduce them to the former place names.
我觉得希腊语很好玩，因为可以唱歌跳舞。
But Uma and Edgar say revitalizing the language starts in the home. They've taught their 3 children Soraya. They use it in their daily life.
When we see the butterfly or bird, we will say, oh, atata halibang or anata ayam. Just use some simple sentence to express our feeling.
The couple hope reviving the language will help get the indigenous group official recognition from Taiwan's government.
当然，它也代表了一个这个在台湾的这一块土地上的一个人们有不一样的族群，那属于这个族群特有的一个这样子的一个语言，我觉得是非常珍贵的。那它也代表了我们的一个认同。
The language would still be long forgotten if Uma and Edgar hadn't fallen in love and married.
We found this old document and we wanted to bring it back to life. Yeah. So if we did not meet each other, then perhaps heaven would create maybe another couple that would, have done that. But we're not sure. There's no telling, right?
Composer Edgar and lyricist Uma now make music together in a language that is both old and new, while helping to rediscover a people's lost identity. Ricky and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Despite a cold and rainy day in Taipei, the local Filipino community turned out on Sunday for a parade to mark the feast of Santo Niño, a key date in the Philippines' religious calendar. The festival, named Beats for Peace, featured colourful traditional dresses and creative costumes with music and dancing. The organisers called the event a way to bring Philippine culture to Taiwan amid the disruption to international travel caused by the COVID pandemic. Thanks for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Finally today, we leave you with some aerial views of Kaohsiung Lantern Festival. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the TaiwanPlus app. Stay safe and see you next time.